as well, because that's all been a big part of it. And we're going to carry on doing that tonight. That hasn't finished. We've got the last session. So congratulations, you've made it. It's brilliant. And hopefully over the weeks, you've been able to pick up some helpful things that will set you up for life. And it might be just an idea, it might be a concept, it might be something that straight away you've started doing, or it's made you think about things in a slightly different way. So whatever that might be, we really hope that you can take some of those things. Just to do a quick review, I'm going to go through really quickly the last titles of the last 7 weeks. I'm not going to go through all the content of the last 7 weeks because we'll be here until Sunday. But I'm just going to quickly go through the titles, so hopefully it might just remind you of some of the things we've been talking about. So week 1 was the problem of emotionally unhealthy spirituality. Week 2 was knowing yourself that you may know God. Week 3 was going back to go forward. Number 4 was journeying through the wall. And number 5 was enlarging your soul through grief and loss. Number 6 was discovering the rhythm of the daily office and Sabbath. And number 7 last week was growing into an emotionally mature adult. And we hope these sessions have been. And session 8 this week is go the next step to develop a rule of life. We're going to be talking about this concept of a rule of life. And we hope that these sessions have helped you to, think more about how to have an emotionally healthy spiritual life. And ultimately, it's about growing closer to Jesus. That's what we want. We want our relationship with Jesus to grow, to become closer to him, and work out practically how we do that as well, because it's a lovely idea and concept. So this session is intended, I went sort of like a slightly, I don't know what I was trying to do then. But this session is intended to bring all our previous sessions together. And this whole idea of rules, or rule of life, might sound a little bit unusual. And actually, I don't know about you, but quite often the idea or the concept of a rule is something that puts people off the idea of Christianity, it scares people away a little bit, because they think suddenly the stuff that they've been able to do, or the freedom they've had in a certain way, is going to be taken away, because then there's going to be this new set of rules that they're going to have to abide by. And it almost, I think, quite often scares people away that it's going to squeeze the joy out of life. So associating Christian faith with rules almost seems counterintuitive. But there's a spiritual formation practice called developing a rule of life within Christian faith. And that is not meant to constrain us. It actually liberates us. It is a rule that has the purpose of infusing joy rather than squeezing it out. And I'm talking about the rule of life. So our focus for this session is taking a small step to develop a personal rule of life, to center your life around the love of God. And for this reason, the final session is to introduce you to another ancient buried treasure out of church history, which is called the rule of life. So we're going to start off with a question, and you've got 5 minutes just to talk about this in your group. If you could instantly have any skill or be knowledgeable about something, what would it be and why? And I've got that on a slide, so just to remind you of that question. If you could instantly have any skill or be knowledgeable about something, what would it be and why? You've got 5 minutes to chat. Brilliant. Let's just round those conversations off. Some of you might have been quite interested by other people's, what they wanted to. Maybe it's not something you've ever thought about. Maybe you're really good at everything, so there's nothing that is actually. I always think ballet would be quite an interesting one. Do you think I'd make a good ballet dancer, Jane? Yeah, thank you. But I know there's so much work that needs to go into that. That's why I think it's always those things that you have to study, like a brain surgeon, like the amount of work that has to. That's actually not one that I choose, because I think it's a bit icky. But great, all of the brain surgeons out there, well done, that are doing that. That's amazing. But a lot of the time, those things that seem really desirable to us, or the bits of information that we'd love to know more about, it takes time to be able to develop those things. It takes time and effort and energy to put into that. So I want to think a little bit about how we build, how we grow our relationship with God, how we invest time into that tonight. And rules of life are ways of doing that, tools that will help us. And the background of it, the history, I found quite interesting. So it finds its roots, this concept of rule of life, in the men and women who withdrew from society as hermits to the deserts of Egypt and Syria during the 3rd to 5th centuries to seek God after the emperor had made Christianity legal in the Roman Empire. They wanted to free themselves from the worldliness found both inside the church and outside the church, and wanted to truly find God so they can bring him to both the church and the world. They eventually formed communities and organized their daily life around an agreed plan consisting of work, prayer, and the study of Scripture. They knew that to grow and mature spiritually, they needed both one another and a thoughtful, conscious, purposeful plan. They called this plan the rule of life. We also read about it in Acts 2, the early church, when they're trying to put things in place. And it says this in Acts 2:42. They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship, to the breaking of bread and to prayer. Everyone was filled with awe at the many wonders and signs performed by the apostles. All the believers were together and had everything in common. They sold property and possessions to give to everyone who had need. Every day they continued to meet together in the temple courts. They broke bread in their homes and ate together with glad and sincere hearts, praising God and enjoying the favor of all the people. And the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved. So this idea of a rule of life has been something that is gone throughout history. There's a lot of things we talk about in church that aren't new things. We didn't just come up with these at the church plant. They've been ideas and concepts that have been running for years and years. But sometimes this word rule can be misconstrued or give us the wrong idea. But the word that is in the New Testament, when it talks about rules, is actually connected to the ancient Greek word for trellis. And I thought, what better than pop over to our very own ESK and pick up a trellis, just as a way of reminding us what a trellis looks like. Maybe there was a better way of spending that $2.99, I don't know. But the thing about a trellis is that, for those I'm not actually a gardener, but we've got some HCH gardeners in the house, which is really good, so you can tell me if I'm wrong on this one. But a trellis is a support. It's often a way that new things can attach themselves to or be attached to then be able to grow and be protected, especially in those early stages. And this word rule is best described as a trellis. It's something that actually enables a grapevine to get off the ground, grow upward, and become more fruitful and productive. In the same way, a rule of life is a trellis that helps us abide in Christ and become more fruitful spiritually. It's been said that a rule of life, or a trellis of life, is an exterior framework for an interior journey. It's an exterior framework for an interior journey. a kind of scaffolding to use to build the spiritual structure that provides structure and direction for us intentionally so that we can pay attention and remember God in everything we do. Now, the book goes into a lot more detail and info about that, which we're not going to cover tonight, because I want to make sure there's lots of chance to be able to talk about some of these concepts. But basically, the goal is to be with God and to love him in everything we do. And hopefully that's something that we can all agree is a good and helpful thing. If you don't think that's a good and helpful thing, well, we can always chat about that afterwards, and that's cool. But that sounded passive-aggressive to the max, didn't it? Like I was going, we can talk about it afterwards. But no, genuinely, I'm really up for chatting about that afterwards. I think I've got a naturally sarcastic tone as well, so I have to watch that. But I'd love to chat to you. But that is the goal, to be with God and to love him in everything we do. So I'm going to give you 15 minutes to think about this question. When or where do you feel most connected or the closest to God? When or where do you feel the most connected or the closest to God? And you might not know the answer to this, and that's okay. Don't worry if you're sitting there thinking, or if you're at home thinking, oh, actually, I haven't got somewhere where I feel close to God. Feel free to just listen. And you might want to just talk about maybe something that makes you think of God. But I'd love if you've got a place or a thing or something that helps you feel connected or feels close to God. It'd be great to be able to share that. So we've got 15 minutes, and let's go for that now. Amazing. Thank you. Hopefully, those discussions have been helpful. Off the back of that, I'd love to look at how we focus on 3 ways we can grow our own rule of life. And then we're going to spend some time looking at some examples of rules of life. And then there's going to be an opportunity to pick one of those and think about how you can then put that into your life, how you can introduce that into your life. So the 3 things that I think that are really good to consider, and Pete Scazzaro talks about this in his book and explains them in a slightly different way, and I've just tried to break them down into 3 things that I thought were quite helpful for me to be able to digest. So the first one is to explore, and I think we've got a little slide which says explore, just in case you had missed what I'd said then, which is super helpful there, so that's great to have that. Don't be disheartened if, when you're looking for a new way of connecting with God, when you're thinking of introducing something into your life, if you've tried something and it doesn't work. There's going to be a lot of trial and error and time. Sometimes you might fall on something that works really well straight away, and that's great. But quite often, the way that we connect with God, or the spiritual practices that bring you closer to God, are the things that you've just been talking about in your groups, things that already you naturally do to connect, either with other people or to connect with God. There's quite often similarities in that. It's good to ask that, like, what are the things that exactly done that? But also think about what drives you away from him. Is there anything you've ever done that you thought, this should be really helping me in my walk with God, in my relationship with God, but actually I'm coming to the end of this and I'm feeling further away from him. I'm feeling really disheartened. I'm feeling frustrated. I'm feeling really bored. I know for myself that if I tried to do the Bible in a year, I would get 3 days in and start feeling really disheartened that I hadn't read. I'd probably miss day 2, be catching up on day 3. But I know some people are really good at sticking to that. And does that mean that I'm not as good a Christian? No, it doesn't. It just means that my brain works in a different way to other people. My interests are different. So what drives you away? Be really aware of those things. Don't try and force yourself into some kind of box thinking, this is the Christian thing to do. This is the way that I'm meant to be living my life so that I can connect with God. And how can you discern the right combination for your particular rule of life? There might be a few things that come together, a few different rules that mold into this thing that really helps you connect with God. Because that's what it's about. That's what we said the goal was earlier. It's about growing more in love with Jesus. You may also want to learn more about the areas that we're going to look at. You might want to dive into those a little bit deeper. You might want to explore them a little bit more. So don't feel disheartened if you try something, it doesn't work. There are many other ways that you can connect with God. There's an infinite list, and we're just going to explore a few in a bit. But also, if you've tried something and then years later you think, oh, I know that didn't work, do try it again. There might be stuff that changes throughout your life. There might be something that you really can't find, really frustrating, or find you can't concentrate, or it's just not helping. And then you come back to it months, years later. I like to call it the Parsnip Effect. And because growing up, I used to hate parsnips. And my dad used to goad me every time, every Sunday lunch. Do you want a parsnip? Do you want a parsnip? I was like, no, I don't want a parsnip. I hate parsnips. And then one day I tried a parsnip again, and I loved the parsnip. And now I eat all the parsnips. And my dad says, oh, I wish I hadn't have kept on going on about it. Yeah. But the parsnip effect might happen in your relationship with God. I don't think God's going to goad you like my earthly dad does. But he does like a little laugh with us every now and then. So explore was number 1. Number 2 is quality over quantity. Give yourself lots of time for the slow development of what's best for you. Don't feel like you need to suddenly just do everything at once. Don't feel like you need to rush around. Like I need to be going to church more. I need to be giving more to charity, or I need to do this. I need to do that. Just take your time. Try one or two things and examine your life. Keep reviewing it with God. Keep talking to God about it because he wants to work those things with you. You may notice that many areas need work, but the best approach is to start with only one or two elements for the first few weeks, days, months. Then, after you experience some success with those, you'll want to add another building block to your life. And it might be that you want to go into that thing a little bit deeper. It might be that you think, well, let's try something else. Let's give something else a go and see what happens. Or you may want to stay with the same element to work on it over a longer period of time. So be willing to make mistakes in this. Try again. Learn new things. Don't give up, because even if one thing doesn't work, I can definitely say from my life, this is 100% true. The more things you try, the more stuff you'll be like, okay, great. I get a little bit out of this. I find this a bit helpful. I love doing this. I remember the first time I was like, right, I'm just going to go for a walk. I'm just going to go for a walk, and I'm going to say to God, I'm going for a walk with you. That's all I did. It was really simple. There wasn't anything different about what I was doing. I didn't carry my Bible under my arm, or wasn't listening to worship music. As much as that's great, I've done that as well. It was just literally just going for a walk. And I just came away feeling like, I didn't hear, it wasn't like I heard some amazing, the voice of God or anything like that. I didn't come away feeling like, oh, I know exactly what I want to do in my life now. But I just felt like I'd met with God in a new way. I felt at peace. I felt like I'd spent time with him. And that was something that really helped me. So do take your time over this. Don't feel like you need to rush into it. It's quality over quantity. And number 3, it needs to be joy-filled, like a Cadbury's cream egg, but not as sickly as a Cadbury's cream egg. After one or two, you start feeling boxes, you start feeling a little bit, feeling a bit on the sick side. It has to be joy-filled. Be careful to avoid any traces of legalism. You want to be careful with this treasure of a spiritual discipline, like all that we do, that it does not become a have to rather than a want to. It should never be a have to. It should always be a want to, and out of a place of wanting to get to know God more. If it feels like a heavy yoke for you or anyone in your group as you're talking about this, throw it off. Jesus' yoke is easy and light. His yoke and call to us fits our uniqueness perfectly. So, I need a little bit of help, actually. Ooh, doing things different on the last week, are we? So, I need 6 people that would be up for just coming up and standing on stage. All you're going to do is hold 2 pieces of paper. You don't have to say anything. You just need to hold these pieces of paper. And these are 12 different rules of life. And then I'm going to deep dive into a couple of those. So, 6 people, just start coming up, and let's give them a round of applause as they start coming up. Yes. Yeah, look, and you're counting as well, and you know that that's 4. So we've got 5, so we need 1 more, and there, yeah, let's keep clapping. Yeah, let's cheering them on. Come on, this is amazing. Thank you so much. Right. Can I give you those? Thank you so much. Thank you. Can you hold that one as well? Is that all right? Or this is where I hope I got my numbers right, and it's just... No, that'd be horrible, wouldn't it? Thank you. Brilliant. Oh, yeah, thank you. Okay, so here's 12. I don't know if that's helpful for the cameras, actually, if I jump off stage. Are we all right? Yep, it's all good. It's got thumbs up from TV. So we've got... These aren't, an exhaustive list. These are just some of the ways of doing. These are some of probably the main ones we talk about in church, but there's so many others. So if you see, as we go through these, and you think, there isn't something there that I like doing, or I don't know what that means, we're going to explain it a little bit more. I've got some handouts for you. So silence and solitude, we've been through already. Taking time out on your own, taking time to actually be quiet in the busyness of life. Scripture is all about getting into the Word of God, reading the Bible, listening to what God wants to say. Community is about how you travel that with other people. A big part is church, but another great big part of that is Hub Central. That's what we're doing right now. It's about community. Family is about how you deal with your relationships throughout life, whether that's friendships, whether that's the people at work, whether that's family and all those sorts of things. Emotional health is a big part of what we're doing. That's the whole point of this course, about how this connects to our spirituality, and also different ways of doing that. Service and mission is about how we look outwards, which we do elements of that within the church, and some of you will be involved in things like Safe Haven. It might be youth work or kids work. I'm getting so excited to drop the microphone. Look at that. Caring for the body, that's more about physical, about, exercise, about what we eat, all of those sorts of things. Play and recreation, that's about hobbies, and I'm going to dig into that one a little bit deeper because I think that was quite interesting. Simplicity is about cutting back. It's about not having all of the things, it might be that your calendar's absolutely packed, it might be that your days are packed, and actually it's about how you can simplify that, about the things that are taking up your time, or the things that are taking up your money or your resources, and how then you can live a life which is a bit more simple. Sabbath, I'm falling more and more in love with what Sabbath means, and how we rest. And that's not just about not going shopping on a Sunday, or it's not just about having a day off, as much as that is part of Sabbath, but how we rest well. Study, that's more about how we actually get involved in some of the deeper stuff with the Bible. So it might be that you decide to go to Bible college, or it might be that you take a course around a specific area to do with who God is, or what that looks like in the world. And then daily office is about prayer. It's about the day-to-day as we talk to God and spend time with him. So these are just 12 ideas, and I'm going to dig into those a little bit deeper. Guys, feel free to just pop them down on the floor. Thank you so much for holding those. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you so much. That's amazing. Now, those things, we could put all of those on this trellis. These are all rules of life, things that can actually help us grow, things that can help us become attached more and more to the grapevine. So the grapevine can then be attached to the trellis so it can grow, so it can bear fruit. Now, I said I wanted to dig into some of these a little bit, and I'm just going to pick out 3. The first one that I'd like to look at in a bit more detail is daily office, prayer. Now, an example of this might be that you want to set an alarm on your phone each day. In the office the other day, Toby just suggested it hit 12 o'clock, and we're like, let's say the Lord's Prayer together. And we just did it in the office. And actually, it was a really helpful way of stopping and saying, let's just remember why we're doing this. This is a really helpful thing. If you don't know what the Lord's Prayer is, or you don't know where to find it, you can find it in Luke 11 in the New Testament of the Bible. Maybe focusing on a specific bit of it each time. Maybe you could start the morning off with a coffee and a chat with God. I know some people have got a space that they go and sit in, either in the morning, that is their chair, or they might have a room in the house, or the flat, or in the garden. They might have somewhere that they go. When I do that, it's not something I do every night. It's not something I do every morning. It's something that I often forget to do, or sometimes it's rushed. But when I do it, I always find that it helps. I might not always know, it might not always feel like, oh, this is the best thing ever, and I've suddenly got all the answers to everything I need. But I do always feel like there's just something about connecting with God which puts me in a better place. For me, I often sit outside. I find there's something quite nice about being in the garden, within nature, within creation. Often on the doorstep, especially as it gets colder, so I can quickly run back in again. And I have a peppermint tea. Really simple. I'm not going to go into how you make peppermint tea, because you'll all know that. It's one of the most simplest things to do, especially when it's just a tea bag. I'm going into it, I don't need to. Light a candle. I just find there's something about lighting a candle, but you don't need to do that. But this is just what I find helpful. I light a candle, and it just helps me remember why I'm doing it. It sort of sets a pattern. And, it's really important that I find that once I get into patterns of things, I start to become a bit more legalistic. I have to be really careful that that doesn't sneak in. That if it's suddenly absolutely chucking it down with rain outside, I'm not just sitting out there thinking, well, no, this is my time with God. I must stay out here. I'm going to get wet. And that's just part of it. Or I've run out of peppermint tea bags, so I can't pray to God tonight. Or the candle's gone, someone's stolen the candle. That's not what it's about. Those things are helpful, and they help me getting into the right mindset, but it shouldn't become a legalistic thing. And I frame that with three things, three questions that help me. Again, if this helps, great. If not, just ignore it. But first question I think about is, what's occupying my mind? So I talk to God about that. What is it that's on my mind at the moment? What's going on? The second one is, what am I grateful for? Because I find that the first one tends to be quite negative, if I'm honest. It tends to be becomes a bit of a list of like, God, these are the things that I really want you to do in my life. This is what I'm thinking about a lot. This is the stuff I want you to sort out. So what am I grateful for is the second question. That just grounds me again in all of the things I have. And normally, sometimes it feels quite free. Sometimes it's through gritted teeth. It's sort of like, yes, thank you for my family. Thank you that I had a nice meal tonight. But I really want that. No, come on, let's focus on it. Thank you. And so it changes, and it changes the sort of mindset. And the last one is, what's next? What am I going to do about these things? What's the next step, as it were? Sometimes I'll only get to question one, which is not always that helpful. Sometimes I'll go through all of them. Sometimes I'll jump to one. But it doesn't matter. I don't want it to become legalistic. I'm just going to pick one other thing out that I think is really important. That's Sabbath. A couple of examples of this is you may want to begin setting apart a 24-hour period to do Sabbath. And that might be a year project. It might start with, a few hours in a day, and then you grow that over time. And that might look different for different people in different seasons of your life. And I completely get that that's not always possible for different people because of all sorts of different things. But I would challenge the I can't because thought process. It might be that you can't do that right now, but is it something that you can work towards? Is it something that you can start building into the pattern and work up towards? Because I think it's really, really important to have time to rest, really important to put down want, to put down the stuff that maybe is causing us stress or bringing in stuff that is unhelpful into our lives, and to just spend time with Jesus and do things that fill you with joy. So I'm going to come and I might ask somebody else to do this because what the best way of doing this, I know, I'm not going to get you to come on stage, but if one person from each group could come and grab 4 of these, they're all the same, and it's just got those 12, Sarah, can you give out those? Is that all right? Give 4 to each person that comes out, thank you. One person from each group, just to come and grab 4 of these. And these are basically the 12 things that we just looked at, but with some examples for each one. And I'm just going to give you, 15 minutes again, or thereabouts, to have a read through of these. So have a read through first and there won't be enough for everyone in the group. If you've got more than 4 people in your group, you might want to share. But there's enough of 4 for each group. So if you do really need another one, then it's tough because I'd have to go and print it out and I can't do it. But yeah, have a read through of those. Or if there's less than 4 in a group, you might want to give one to another group. That might be the kind thing to do. Who knows? Feel free to take these with you as well. Have a read through of these. I reckon have a couple of minutes just reading through, and then look at the examples. And then I want you to just have a think about this question. What is the one rule that you want to take forwards? It might be that it's, which one rule of life are you going to introduce into your life? And once you've had a look at that and had a bit of a think about it, I'd love you to just discuss that. And it'd be great if you can encourage people in different ways. It might be you've found something that works for you really well in this area, and you could talk to somebody else about that. Or you might have a question about one of those. So these are just ideas. The examples are only examples. It might be that you approach these in other ways, but hopefully it gives you a bit of an idea about what those things can be. So have a think and discuss, and then I'll be back on in a minute. Well, more than keep talking, just going to carry that time into prayer. So would love you to start praying for each other around those things. So if you haven't had a chance to sort of specifically say one of the things you'd like to do, maybe just you can pray about that yourself in this time, or you can pray for somebody else that you've heard. So try and make sure everyone's been prayed for or everyone's had an opportunity to pray. And let's just go straight into that now. And we'll come back up at the end of it just to say a couple more bits. Thanks, guys.